want to get started because I know we have a lot to cover. And I'm just going to quickly pop in and say hello and introduce you all to Cropped Kitchen. My name is Rachel Burkhans. I'm on the leadership team at Cropped Kitchen, and I want to really share that our mission is to create an inclusive and well-represented space across the culinary cannabis industry. We're looking to develop new career paths and opportunities. There are a lot of regulatory issues that have been kind of orphans in the regulatory space that we'd like to address, and also in general, just raise awareness and be advocates for our businesses and for this part of the community. So I'm very excited that we can bring this really important topic of race and food and hospitality to the table. Obviously, there's been a lot of conversations, but this is a really unique nexus. And we're very excited because we have some of the biggest names in the culinary cannabis industry here today to lend their expertise and share some of their knowledge. So let's hear from them. You know, I think this is a perfect day on Juneteenth to celebrate some of the finest in this industry. So let's, without any further ado, I will pass it along to my dear friend, Joline Rivera of Kitchen Toke magazine, who's going to take it away from here. Thank you, guys.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. It's so nice to see all of you. Some of you I'm getting to see for the first time. Mennley's been a contributor to the magazine. We've featured her cookbook. Miguel and Andrea were in our very first issue in 2017. We noted them as game changers in the industry. And then Shanel, I get to meet for the first time. And it's a pleasure to talk to you. I was very excited to have this call today, but I'm gonna let you take a minute and introduce yourself to all of our watchers. We'll start with you, Andrea.
Oh, hi. My name is Andrea Drummer. I am a cannabis chef, a cannabis advocate, and a co-owner of the first cannabis cafe in West Hollywood, Original Cannabis Cafe.
Go ahead, Miguel.
Hi, my name is Miguel Trinidad. I am a founder and chef for 99th Floor. We are a cannabis food and beverage company.
And then Shanel.
Hey everyone, I'm Shanel Lindsay. I'm founder of Ardent. We make this awesome little all-in-one cannabis kitchen decarboxylating infusing machine. And I'm also an attorney and on the advisory board here in Massachusetts when it comes to the adult and medical use cannabis industry.
Nice. And Mennley.
Hi, how's it going, everyone? Happy Juneteenth. My name is Mennley. I'm a hustler of all sorts, but the author of The Art of Weed Butter, which is a cookbook here in Mexico. I'm the founder of Cinas and Fronteras and a CBD company called Xula Wellness.
I'm so glad that I let you do that. I would have just not have said that as beautifully. As the founder of Kitchen Toke, you know, we've had the pleasure of, like I said before, having all of these guests in one way or another in the magazine, and if not yet, will be soon. And you know, Rachel asked me to moderate this discussion today, and I wanted to start it off by talking about, first I want to say that all of the questions in the chat room are going to be available for all of you watching. You can post your questions and we'll get to those as we move along through the conversation. But I find myself, I don't know about you guys, I'm sure this is a defining moment these last 3 months in many, many ways. We're amid a global panic. We're amid the Black Lives Matter protests, continued efforts to dismantle oppressive mindsets, systems, amplify Black voices. And it's fitting, I believe, to be here today on Juneteenth. And in some ways, I never thought I would say this, but I find that the health crisis happened at the perfect moment when there's no restaurants to go to. There's nothing to watch on television, no sports. We're all at home, and we were basically forced to watch the events of I guess, Memorial Weekend play out. And in some ways, I think that that's exactly what was needed. So I want to ask you all maybe to let's have some conversation about where you are at the moment. How has it affected you, your community, and where you are right now? Jump right in. A pause.
That's a loaded question.
Yeah.
Yeah, where are we? Of course, first, the entire shutdown, I do think you're onto something, that I think it was all like kind of divine order. Yeah, it feels crummy when we first got into this pandemic, but everything kind of happened, I think it's perfectly timed. So first we're dealing with, of course, being in the industry, in the culinary industry, of shutting down restaurants and trying to sort that out and trying to take care of our staff and such and so forth. And then all of these other things unfold. I think it's just a beautiful time to be alive. In spite of all of the circumstance, it's just like we are living in history right now, you know? So it's rough. It's change is often challenging. And, you know, we have to be present in it and find out where we want to be in it and what our voice is in it and how we contribute to the other side of history, if that makes sense.
Amen. Amen. You know, being from New York City, I am just used to running all the time. It's like, it's nonstop, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. There's always something going on. And this pandemic has forced me to slow down and really see what's important. I mean, is it running to the restaurant every day and the daily grind and hustle, or, you know, sit back and enjoy your family and enjoy everything that we're working so hard to create? It's been a curse and a blessing, because it has forced me to adjust and prioritize what's really important in life. But at the same time, like Andrea said, you know, keeping track of our staff and making sure that they're taken care of, and trying to figure out solutions to keep the restaurant alive and keep money in people's pockets, and doing whatever you can to help the community.
Yeah, that pressure is enormous. How about you guys? Mennley, Shanel?
You know, I come from the standpoint, whereas with Cinas and Fronteras, it's more of a pop-up. And so that already is sort of an unstable concept in itself. And, you know, I come also from a place of being more of a quasi-food historian. I'm not really affiliated with any academic affiliation, but I do recognize that it's given me a little bit of a moment to take pause and research. Research has been really helpful for me combating, you know, anti-Blackness in general here in Mexico and also in other places in the world. And so that has been giving me, again, like this pause to think about, how do you move forward, and like what does the industry look like in the future, and how do we shape that, and like you said, like maintain money in the pockets of people who need it to survive.
It was really interesting when COVID first hit, because there was definitely a huge surge in people's interest in how to make cannabis products at home, right? Mm-hmm. People started to be first there was a rush on the dispensaries, and I think everybody's concern was getting enough product to get them through whatever quarantine or whatever drought people thought that they were going to experience. And then after they got whatever they could get, the next question was, how do I make this last longer? So we definitely saw a ton of interest, and from even customers that had our product before and then hadn't used it in a while, calling up wanting to know and know all these different things that they could do. So that was really interesting to see you know, a lot of new people try to figure out that piece and be interested in how they cook at home. For us, we just actually released a new product, right? We were actually pre-selling our new FX that cooks food inside of it. So the goal there is to be a crossover device, right? To be a personal cooker. And so the timing there was definitely interesting, because the whole idea of having a little personal cooker where no one else has to touch it, or you don't have to be in a kitchen to do it, that was definitely good timing when it came to that. I think the challenge over here, you know, when it comes down to cannabis and policy, it was also very interesting, because we're at the point right now of just releasing a new set of licenses in Massachusetts, delivery licenses, and also pushing to expand our equity provisions. And I think that in Massachusetts, there's often this idea that we're just this awesome progressive state, and that everybody is, everybody has these ideals of equality. And I think that the one big thing that this latest push for justice showed us is just the insidiousness of, silence when it comes to and complicitness in what's happening. And, for a great example, Rashad Brooks, the second officer involved in that shooting, is from Southborough in Massachusetts. And so that was a real opportunity for people of color in Massachusetts to say, hey, we really have so much more work to do here. And it's not just, all kumbaya here. In fact, we are one of the most segregated states and cities in the country, and it's time to reckon with that in a real way. So I'm hoping that that momentum really pushes into, some real changes on the ground here.
I think I just read yesterday, Shanel, that unions were forming, cannabis unions. Is that correct in Massachusetts?
Yeah, we have some in Massachusetts now. I think that there are a couple of shops that have unionized here, but we also have, big companies who are, of course, putting up Black Lives Matter, squares and other things like that have been completely against us when it came to every aspect of us pushing for equity. So I think that, there's a lot to be worried about being co-opted, in what's happening now. And so I think it's important for us to be, calling that out, because, the same people that are, claiming support for the movement are the very ones that are trying to stomp out business opportunities for us here.
Absolutely.
Tell me, you guys, I feel like you're probably getting asked a lot of things, a lot of questions. What is something that you wish somebody would ask you right now, or something that you wish people were actually paying a little more attention to?
You and your loaded questions.
Well, let's, if you want to give that some thought and think about it, I often, I find myself wondering things, and I've been talking to my friends, and they've said to me, I'm kind of exhausted with answering the same questions, and then also being someone's only Black friend. That's what they tell me. So I think to myself, some of this is exhausting, I'm sure. And I feel like now would be a perfect moment for you to say, this is what I really wish people were talking about. This is what I really wish people were focused on. And
for me, it's not about the ask, it's about what are you doing? Because, I can't be the voice for all Black lives or Black people or my community. So it's really about what are you doing and to contribute to this movement or to change. And because I cannot be responsible, since forever we've had to learn the history of this nation, which is of course white. And I've had to learn about white culture and what it is to be American, if you will. So now I think it's really time for society to learn about Black and brown culture. So it's not, don't ask me.
Nice. Don't ask me anything.
I would love someone to ask me how many millions I would like for an investment. I would love that question.
I'm glad you said that. You know, tell me,
Hey, there's a good one.
yeah, tell me exactly. Yeah, tell me what, I mean, you guys have all been founders, business, you know, 99th Floor Miguel, Andrea, the restaurant, and before that you have pop-ups. Shanel, you came from the legal side, got into cannabis, started your cooking device, Mennley, you've got the cookbook, your pop-up, plus your CBD company. Tell me what it's, have you experienced racism in that, do you think?
Well, you know, my first foundation of the cannabis industry was back in 2005, and I was a 21-year-old grower, Black grower chick, hidden in Humboldt County. And it was this parallel between living in a place where it's all hippy dippy and off the grid, but also very redneck and very racist and very sort of tied to this Confederacy. And so that existence in itself was very tried. And I think it's pretty obvious, but it should be noted that to be Black and to be a Black woman is to have, since day one, been teaching and learning and exhausted by all of the things, right? It's ongoing. And if that is at all advice for other people who are feeling like there's too much to learn, how do I do it all now? I think it's important to remember that, like, this is a lifetime of existence for many Black folks. I mean, for all Black folks, what am I talking about? And so it's not gonna happen overnight. This is gonna be an ongoing process that as a nation, as a globe, we have to work through. But yes, I've definitely experienced racism. I mean, I think besides from experiencing racism, what was the most shocking is this past year, a hemp company sort of wanted to hire me to do some consulting. Every once in a while I do it. And they came up with several names for their hemp company. And one of the names was Plantation. And the other name was Indigenous, spelled wrong. And I you know, that I think that says enough. That's where we're at. That's where we're at still. And after 15 years of doing something, you would think you could see some sort of progression. So the status quo of what we have been doing in the past is just no longer going to work and function. And where we're at is a very necessary and a very potent time to move forward and to step out of the shadow of what everyone has been dealing with for a very long time.
Amen.
You want to add how many millions you're looking for, or? I mean,
probably 5 would be okay for me. Anyone?
That's a humble number.
well, I mean, Andrea, tell us, I mean, you started off teaching Just Say No to Drugs to kids and then went from there into a cannabis career. So tell us about that.
You trying to call me out?
No, I actually think it's so fascinating.
No, yeah, I was, my first career was in nonprofit. And so what that looked like for me is I worked for everyone from the Urban League to the Coalition for the Homeless in New York, to drug prevention programs. So all of my rhetoric was, you know, just say no to cannabis. And so for where I am today, you know, and educating myself about the plant, moving from New York to California, and understanding that I was a part of the problem, essentially, and I was a part of the propaganda. So I have gone back to the young people that I worked with, and I've made amends.
That's awesome. That's pretty great.
Yeah, but that journey, it taught me a lot, because that is a part of the problem. It is, you know, demonizing and stigmatizing cannabis, whereby contributing to mass incarceration, because that demonization was purely about racism, right? And we know that and understand that. Well, most of us. I think we all know it, but we just don't all accept it.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's some willful ignorance going on, I think, still. Yeah.
So it's just a part of, it's, I think for all of us here, it is about being a part of changing that narrative. And we do so in our own right. So, you know, again, it goes back to, don't do your research. It's time for everyone else to step up and do your research and do the work, because we are doing it.
Yeah. And Shanel, I mean, I read about your story, how how you started using cannabis because of a medical issue, but also your arrest, which I was completely fascinated by, and your, you know, quick thinking and action and what your rights were. Can you share that a little bit?
Yeah, great times. You know,
Great times.
Oh, you did a bid.
So when I was a young lawyer, you know, I had a legal career before I went into cannabis, and I was always, you know, using cannabis from when I was in my late teens, and we started using it medically after my son was born when I was 19 for an ovarian cyst, which I, you know, still treat it to this day. And so I think what happened was, and this happens pretty often, is when decriminalization ended up coming to Massachusetts. And so decriminalization came, and I started to feel a little bit better about the fact that, you know, maybe there's some protection for me, because at that point I was also growing my own cannabis at home. So it was a really serious thing that I was doing, not just buying it, but I was actually cultivating in my own home, you know, and in a spare bedroom. And I got pulled over on my way to work, and a police officer saw a little bit of cannabis in a jar and pulled me out of the car, threw me in the back of the police car, impounded my car, and brought me to the police station. And this was, what I had on me was less than an ounce. And so at that time, I was just, you know, completely shocked about why I was getting arrested. And, you know, my whole legal career flashed before my eyes, because I remember, despite the fact that I was, again, at a supposedly like progressive firm, you know, I remember that about a month before that, this professor at Harvard got arrested for growing cannabis in his backyard. And when I came into the law office the next day, we all ate lunch together at this, you know, this lunch table. And instead of being outraged that this guy got arrested, they were talking about how stupid he was and how foolish he was for doing that. And so imagine, you know, my shock 2 months later when I get arrested and I'm literally getting ready to go and be arraigned in the same courthouse where I represent clients. Like, that would have been just the end of everything that I had worked for. So it was a very scary, you know, hour or so when I was, you know, in handcuffs in the police station, you know, pleading for why are they doing this? And then starting to think like, wait a minute, this is a violation of my civil rights. Like, why am I here in handcuffs? And so I was able to say that, like, why are you, you know, doing that? And there was a woman there who was like a dispatcher or something. And she was just like, no, you had probable cause to do that she said to the officer. And I thought, this woman really wants me to go to jail, you know, over this, and really doesn't care about what happens to me or my life. And so I said to them, yeah, that might be true about the probable cause at the side of the road, but we're in the police station now. You have everything that you need in order to be able to tell if this was over an ounce or not, like a scale. I know you guys have a scale back there. And it got really quiet and they left. And then 15 minutes later, they come back. He came back and said, yeah, it was 14 grams. And I said, I know, I told you, because I knew obviously it was my cannabis. So I got let go then, but it actually became like a pattern of harassment after that, because all of a sudden police officers were just like showing up at my door to you know, check on things. And so I actually had to cut down all of my plants and throw them away because I was afraid of literally going to jail over that at that time. So I just saw, you know, firsthand that decriminalization is only a Band-Aid, and it only, you know, it only helps the people that the police want to help. And so carving out a real legal, you know, framework for cannabis where it is not illegal at all became very important. And again, that's where like the push for adult use here in Massachusetts, you know, that my desire to be, you know, involved in that piece. And thankfully we were able to make that happen. So all worked out at the end.
Yeah, well, I was talking to Rachel earlier earlier this week, and you know, especially for you, Miguel and Andrea and Mennley, you guys all have some form of pop-ups, you know, but there is no license. You can get a license to have an event, right? Can't sell tickets. You can't really, it's just, how do we get a license to be a chef that can infuse a meal for people? How do we do that, you know?
Well, here in New York, you know, it's still illegal. And, you know, just to echo on what Shanel was saying earlier, decriminalization only helps people that actually know their rights, because otherwise it just puts everybody else in jail. It puts everybody else in a bad predicament. Here in New York, it's still illegal. And what we do, you know, in order to put on our events, we travel the United States cooking in legal states, in non-legal states, but it's all private events. It's catered to our members. It's by invitation only. We do not release tickets to the public. It's a very catered list that comes to our events. But we do that in order not only to promote the brand, but, you know, to advocate for the plant and for the medicine, and to destigmatize cannabis through that universal language of food. Here in New York, you walk down the street, you smell weed, cops automatically think that, you know, you're some type of gang member, you're getting into trouble, it's like you're gonna steal something, all right? But Willie Nelson has been doing it for years. Nobody says shit to him, right? So it's a fight that will continue to happen. We keep pushing for legalization in New York. We keep pushing for our rights, and it's not going to stop until it happens. And for people who are listening out there, a question that I want people to ask is, when is New York going to step up and make this happen, make it legal?
When is the country going to step up and make this legal and make this happen?
Yes.
Because there should be global legalization. It makes no sense that a plant should be illegal anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very specific thing and we know the history of cannabis and how it became illegal. So yeah, we have to change that. And I think we are all doing our part. But yeah, I used to have, like, you had to know the knock on the door to get into my pop-ups. You had to know the right code, like say the word, you know, you had to know somebody that knew somebody. And there are get-arounds. I see people using different tactics to do pop-ups, which is to say that it's not illegal to sell a plate of food, but to sell a plate of infused food, of course. So I could sell you food, but I could give you the cannabis. So there are get-arounds that people are using, but you know.
So tell me, let's talk about food a little bit. I mean, you guys, we all had started somewhere, and then all of us somehow in one way we're all into culinary cannabis. Talk about what you see moving forward. You know, I've had many thoughts about, you know, because of where we are and food trends and things that are happening, everything is just like clean slate now. What do you see happening next for each of you as we transition through this? What are you looking at? I mean, if this is giving you time, you know, to take pause and really look, what are you looking at? It's a really good time, I think, to get out of your business day to day and work on your business. So what are you guys doing?
Well, like I said, you know, I think that with respect, we're all doing the work. You know, we have been doing the work just by the very nature of who we are. We are in this, right? So I think it does give us pause to think about other things and how to continue that work. and just prayerfully that others will take up the banner. But one of the things that I am greatly interested in, especially in this time, is assisting with mental health and wellness. Because I think as a Black person in America, we have PTSD and it has to be addressed. It's been a lot, we've dealt with a lot of ish, you know, and this like, it just adds on to it, you know? And so I want to be able to offer assistance in that area for not only my staff, but anyone that needs it. So I'm working on a foundation that addresses that.
I mean, I've been talking a lot about, you know, as far as Kitchen Toke goes, you know, if you don't, health is your only currency, right? I mean, right now, you can't, without your health, you're not going to be able to do much, you know, not a lot means a lot, I guess, unless you have your health. And we're obviously in the middle of a health crisis. Not that I ever thought we could count on our government or to take care of us, but if we don't take care of ourselves, and you can't talk about health without what you just said, Andrea, you can't talk about health without talking about mental health.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to have more dialogue about it. I wrote my editor's note about it in the next issue. I think it's really important.
Yeah, because the last thing that we need is someone like having an episode in the kitchen with a bunch of knives.
Agreed.
I've experienced that. So tell me,
well,
go ahead.
For me, what has been a major mission is education in the Latino community. I am tired of seeing, you know, my mother, her friends, people in the Latino community, the older generation, just popping all of these pills for, you know, aches and pains, diabetes, shortness of breath. It's like every time they go to the hospital, they're just fed more medication. And if they knew more about the plant and how it can help them, you know, curb all these pills and improve their health, I think it would make a major impact in not only legalization, but taking a lot of money away from big pharma.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody just commented all those pills and all that money.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, for a fraction of the cost, we could be medicating properly and really understand how to use the plant and not depend on all these drugs,
Yeah.
which are killing them slowly.
Oh my God. And if I have it correct, Mennley, I think you originally started writing your cookbook because you were making or writing recipes for a family member, correct?
Yeah, my great aunt Mildred suffers from a various slew of chronic illnesses, and I at the time was just trying to figure out what would work for her and help her with you know, increasing her appetite, or just even wanting to treat, you know, different forms of inflammation and pain. But you know, it's interesting just going kind of far back to what Shanel was talking about. It's incredible how many people are way more excited and way more intrigued about cooking their own infused dishes. And it kind of goes hand in hand perfectly when it comes to food, right? And cannabis, because it's like you can grow your own of all of those things and sort of become more self-sufficient. And that's been really inspiring, not for the sake of saying it's inspiring, whatever, but for the sake of like seeing people take action, you know, for their health and sort of for alternative forms of health. But yeah, the cookbook, and I'm going back to what somebody else was saying. I think Miguel was talking about this, you know, the Latinx community, Latine community. It has been interesting living in Mexico and seeing the response to, you know, infusing esquites or plátanos, which is also plantains. And that's kind of, I think, connected the dots when it comes to the African diaspora and food and cannabis and food. And it's sort of this very, very pregnant, I guess, combination of all the things. What's the word that I'm thinking of? I can't think of it right now. But it it gives me a little bit of hope in terms of knowing that curiosity to heal yourself, to grow something, to research can only help your community. But here in Mexico, it's technically illegal, but it's legal in the sense where it's unconstitutional to say that a person or a citizen of Mexico cannot consume a drug. So there's a lot of, I think it's kind of tricky, and there's a lot of gray area when it comes to whether or not folks are going to be more open about their consumption and more open about eating infused dishes and etc. Kind of went on a tangent, but.
No, hey, I'm a firm believer that you have to eat your way to health. So, I mean, I've been saying that for a while, and just trying to get people to turn to the refrigerator and get fresh food and infuse that before you turn to, the medicine cabinet to help your headache. The first thing I do is figure out what I need to eat or drink. So, Shanel's, you started that way. You had a medical issue, and who introduced you to cannabis for that medical issue?
You're
I
on
can't
mute,
hear.
Shanel.
Oh.
You have to unmute your mic. There you go.
Oh, here we go. Okay, awesome. I was trying to unmute, but having a little technical difficulty. So yeah, when I first started medicating, it was really just, the group of friends I was around that was smoking. And honestly, I had been through the DARE program. And so, all in my early teens, it was like, no, this is not good. This is not gonna, be something good. And I remember the first time I tried it, I actually was having, pain in my cyst. And that is not why I tried cannabis. I was actually like upset about something else that was going on. And I was like, all right, let me just, try this. And it was amazing. That night, I didn't have any pain. And I woke up the next day and I felt fine. And I was like, wait a minute, this is, something isn't adding up here, about what I've been told. And then after that, it was just, both found it incredibly helpful for studying and just staying, focused while I was going through, law school and college and being a young mom and all of that. And then on top of that, never having to use any pharmaceuticals, for my pain and my inflammation with my condition. So it was like a win-win all around. But definitely the process of making edibles and doing it in a way that like didn't stink up my entire house or leave me alcohol tinctures that were burning and like leaving me to be like throwing up essentially. I think that there was a lot missing there when it came to the science behind things, and that's what really drove me as far as finding out these answers to what does it take to activate, what does it take to infuse, and all these things, and make it really simple for people. That's one thing we find a lot, is that people come to us and they're thinking they have to like jump through 15 hoops to get to an infused product, when it really can be a lot simpler for them than that. So my goal was always that people didn't have to go through the 10 plus years of making like really not so great products. They had no idea what was in it, and move to a place where it just is, a lot simpler for them. And I definitely see a change now in, with COVID and everything that's happening, when it comes to, just the distribution of food, right? And how people are going to be accessing, food going forward. And so I think, we're trying to, see and understand how, we can bring innovation to that piece, and also, connect that, to the cannabis piece. I say this all the time, and, echoing what Mennley and Miguel and Andrea were saying too, about this being able to push away from pharmaceuticals. In the legal world especially, you see a lot of drug abuse, a lot of alcohol abuse, a lot of pills, and I think women especially are pushed into things like Klonopin and Valium and other things that can really like destroy people's lives, when it comes down to changing the way that people interact. So I think that, when it comes to pain, or when it comes to you know, mental illness or dealing with trauma, or just, you know, generally how do we blend those two, you know, pieces together. You know, at over here at Ardent, we're always trying to see where that, you know, where cannabis and food meet in a way that's simple for people, where they don't really have to change their habits, because it is really hard when you're asking people to kind of learn about a new product and learn about a new science, and then like also change the way that they, you know, live their daily lives. So I think the more that we can bring cannabis and meet people where they are, you know, a lot of times we tell people, go ahead, decarb your bud, and then, you know, stick it in a capsule, right? And there you go. Now it's kind of like a pill, like you're used to, right? And I think for older people, especially, that, you know, just giving them something that has some familiarity there. I think that a lot of times they're just like scared about dosing and other things like that. And so if we can get over some of those hurdles about, you know, that fear, then we can make a lot of progress.
I think COVID and being quarantined right now is the perfect time for everyone to try that. We're all at home, and it's the perfect safe environment to try cooking with cannabis as well. Tell me what's your favorite thing to cook? I mean, you guys, I know a couple of you are cooking in restaurants, or had been, or currently are, or pop-ups, but what are you doing? What do you do at home? If you're going to infuse a meal, what are you making?
Well,
Just about anything.
Yeah, my favorite thing to cook.
Anything and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, right now I've been doing a lot of, I started doing an infused mole that,
Ooh.
you know, it's just going, I'm playing around with things, and some infused pastas, pizza doughs, sourdoughs, all infused, fun stuff. You know, I have my lady's pregnant, and we're 6 months pregnant. So she, in order to get through some of the pain, you know, it's a slight medication, don't want her smoking. So I do infuse the food at a very low dose to just help her with some of the cramps and morning sickness and stuff like that. After a lot of research and talking to doctors about it, just to understand how the effects are going to be. So another thing we've been playing around with is infusing cheese. So making canna cheese.
Nice.
Yeah, I've done that before. Yeah, I think anytime you ask a chef what's their favorite thing to cook, it's going to be food.
And lots of it.
I've actually been making a lot of horchata, which I guess it's technically a beverage, not food, but it's been really good. Again, I've been kind of nerding out and diving into the historical context of horchata, and you know, it was popularized in Spain and originated, I think, in North Africa and present-day Nigeria, probably as far back as like 2400 BC. And so it's like, it's this very rich historical beverage that I just usually make like a can of milk with, and then just add that to rice milk, soak it overnight, and blend it. But it's just so good. It feels nurturing. It's like, it's like weed breast milk.
One of our viewers are asking you to turn that into popsicles.
Ooh,
there you
that
go.
is a really good idea.
Great idea. Keep those coming. I'm watching these ideas come in. How about you, Shanel?
So I am the non-chef on the panel, right? So often what I do is, you know, get my favorite foods from chefs like this, and then I just kind of infuse or ratchet up the dose with some infused oil of some kind. So really what I focus on mostly is like testing raw ingredients and then testing those out to see whether they go in our kits. So often I'm just trying to see what is the easiest way that I can infuse a one or two ingredient product, whether that's like a pasta or nuts or something like that. So yeah. I leave the real cooking up to the professionals, and but yeah, I've been doing a lot of that over, you know, this COVID period, trying to take some time to do development and that kind of thing. So I've been eating a lot of raw nuts and other kind of just, you know, testing items hopefully maybe you guys will see on the shelves soon once we get back up and running and producing again in our kitchen.
Awesome. What do you guys think food trends are going to be? After this, I feel like it's going to be, what do you think it's going to be? Is it going to be comfort food? What do you think the food trends are going to look like?
I'm taking
after the quarantine, diet food. That's gonna be the
Liquid
trend.
food.
I find
There's
it
been enough
interesting that
comfort food going around.
one of the greatest obstacles that we have in terms of both culinary and cannabis is the ability to infuse any dairy products. Like the dairy industry is hardcore about like we are not, and to think about the historical aspect of that, whereby infused food is historically known for, you know, sweets, which you infuse first butters, right? And so to take that out of the mix is really a slap in the face to the OGs and the industry as a whole. So I think that, you know, I think that's one of our greatest obstacles. I know that the industry is evolving and we are moving in that evolution, but we can't just erase the history of edibles. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. It's I mean, for Kitchen Toke, we're getting ready to launch our first food item on Monday. We've been looking a lot at health and stuff and trying to get that done. Probably Shanel, similar to what you're working on, is trying to get that done during quarantine. It's been a little difficult, but I also think, you know, speaking of difficulty, I think about you guys starting out your personal stories, what we've just touched on earlier, and I think about the drive, the persistence, the grit, your willingness to continue to jump through hoops. What advice would you give people who are listening right now to do for their cannabis career? I think there are a lot of people out there who are just starting or have started and trying to figure out what's next. You guys have, you know, pretty successful stories in cannabis right now. What advice would you give to them?
First thing that comes to mind, I would tell them to do the math correctly. There's a great chef who reached out to me. He's been to our events and he doesn't understand the process of dosing. He makes amazing things, but I find that some of them are just way too strong. And I have a high tolerance, but you know, depending on what you're doing, if you're coming home at the end of a long day and all you want to do is veg, great. But if you want to start your day with 700 milligrams, you better have a high tolerance. And to everybody out there who's beginning to do this or jumping into it and experimenting, really understand the math and what proper dosing is. Everybody has their own number. So learn what that number is for you and for the people that you're going to be serving your product to.
You know, I think I heard you say that once on Vice. And by the way, are you still going to be on the show?
The show was not renewed. It was just one season. Vice is going in a different direction. They're going more towards news and media. But yeah, on the show, we talked about microdosing. You know, I, like Shanel, started when I was very young, playing around with it, but I started using it more frequently for pain. Standing 10, 12, 16 hours a day in the kitchen, coming home, you know, getting out of bed, and your first 3 steps are so painful you want to yell. Cannabis helped a lot with that. And when I got into this, I did not know how to properly dose, because I remember my first attempt at making, you know, besides the edibles when we were teens, when we started making a product, my math was off. And what I thought was a 7 milligram candy was actually 170 milligrams. And I wasn't ready for that at that time. So I had to do a lot of studying and a lot of research and really understand how to properly dose. And for me, microdosing works because throughout the day, I might put some tincture in my tea. I might pop a candy. I might put some cannabis, coconut oil in whatever I'm sauteing my vegetables in, depending on what my needs are. I like to microdose throughout the day. That's why I keep smiling all day.
I would piggyback on that. The same is really understand dosing. The same, Miguel, I came into the industry as a patient And so I'm looking at the broader scope of things and understanding that your audience or your demographic is primarily going to be people coming into this that are reintroducing themselves into cannabis, or that are new patients. And so they are not the ones that are going to just, dose highly or, in large quantities. And so you have to do math. And there are calculators out there that you could use to properly dose. But of course, it goes back to knowing the source of your product. It's the same as if I know the source of my beef or my fish or in my produce. And so you have to know the source, and they must understand their THC levels, CBD levels, and all of these things. And then you test as well. So it's really understanding the source of your product, and then of course, do the math.
Mm-hmm. And to also add to what Shanel was saying, also introducing it in a vehicle that people are comfortable with, like you said, decarbing and putting it in a capsule. I mean, I think my mother would be more open to trying it that way, because she will stay away from anything that I cook for fear that I'm going to dose her.
You poor mom. She'll probably stop eating.
She was one that was extremely skeptical about this, but I started changing her mind with topicals. She has bursitis and a lot of aches and pains, and I made some topicals for her, brought her some topicals from some vendors that I purchased, and at first she wouldn't try it. And then one day she calls me up and she says, I tried that ointment that you gave me. I'm not going to say that it made me feel any better, but it didn't make me feel any worse. A month later, she's asking me to get her some more. So slowly,
That's love it.
That was the same with my mom. She's doing CBD. She hasn't advanced to the other stuff yet, but she's open. Just her being open to it is pretty significant.
Mm-hmm. I gave my mother some chocolates that were medicated, and I swear to God, I saw her skip.
That's awesome. I love it. I love that we're testing on our family.
Who's a better audience?
Yeah,
we're going to be completely honest.
Yeah, and they're truth tellers, right? Everybody needs truth tellers. Come on.
Absolutely.
How about some business advice, Mennley, Shanel? Like our watchers. I mean, I said before, persistence, grit, willingness to jump through hoops. It takes a lot in this industry. You can barely get a bank right now, a bank account, a payment processor. Tell people, give them some advice on how to prepare for what's coming.
It's funny when Miguel said do your math, I didn't know you were initially talking about weighing your cannabis material. I thought you were talking about doing the actual math of how much money you're not going to make by getting into the cannabis. Like, get it right now, because otherwise I think we are in such a powerful age of technology. When I started out, I was too afraid to even bring my flip phone into the grow room. You'd have to pop the battery out and throw it in the freezer because you didn't want the FBI to hear about you talking about your grow. And now you can go on to Leafly and figure out exactly what the THC percentage is of the strain that you have. And so I think use the information that's out there to your benefit, because there's so much of it. When it comes to both being in the food space, but when it also comes to being in the business space, patience is huge, and also maybe flexibility, just being nimble enough. I mean, I'm not a chef. I probably shouldn't even be on this panel, but I've been nimble.
I'm not either.
I've been nimble and just trying to, with integrity and with intention, trying to make sure that I can pivot into something that works better, or that is more fulfilling, or that is less racist or less problematic. So I would suggest with lots of gentle love for you to understand those types of approaches.
How about you, Shanel?
Absolutely. I have to concur with having an outstanding product that actually delivers what people think it will when it comes to dosing. And then I 100% think that being flexible in this industry is above and beyond what is, separates people that are successful from not successful. There is always something that's going to pop up that is going to be a huge challenge. So you have to be, for us, it's been being a small team, and being able to not necessarily pivot, right? We've always had the same mission, but to be able to change, slightly change direction at any given moment. So I think that, one thing people have to realize is that you're going to have probably like as many bad days as that you have as good. And that like still counts as being good in this. But on the other hand, and that comes with like bank account, banks running away with, $50,000 and, you not being able to release a whole line of product because it's just suddenly you can't, right? And it's against the regulations or whatever the case may be, or facing discrimination as a cannabis company. But on the flip side of that, this industry is so in its infancy, that if you're thinking about getting involved and you're involved now, you're already ahead of the game. And I do think that it depends a little bit, my advice depends a little bit on what kind of state that you're in, right? So I think that if people are in a state where, I would say immature states versus more mature states. So an immature state, in my opinion, would be one that doesn't have adult use legalization yet. If you don't have adult use or you don't even have medical, you're in actually an amazing position. You can go and hear your voice and you have no idea the power that you have. So if you're in one of those states right now, I would say like you can really kind of change the trajectory and steer the ship of what's happening around you. If you just go and get involved and find out what's happening and just get really involved with the organizations that are doing legalization work. Or if you don't find it, start your own stuff and then connect with other people. Like you're obviously here, you're within groups of activists and advocates, but there's a huge opportunity there to use your story in order to push cannabis legalization forward. And I think that that's a huge part of cannabis business is tying, your activism to what you're trying to do, because many times in order to change a law, it takes an example of somebody who's there, who wants to do something like that, especially when you're talking about bringing equity into the situation. So if you are an operator who is like operating illegally in a state now that's pushing towards legalization, now is the time for you to get involved to essentially be the face of what you want to see in the change. Because I've seen that happen in Massachusetts, and it just, that being a central piece of it. And then I would say in more mature markets where there's already cannabis businesses up and running, same thing, always lean on your story and what you have to, unique to bring to the table, but also just start partnering and with cannabis companies that are out there and offering up, your services. It doesn't have to be for free, but just start associating and networking, because this industry is one that is definitely based on relationship and getting that knowledge, right? Like the knowledge of the cannabis industry is not just out there, a lot of it is just, kind of institutionalized and passed down and not something that you can learn easily. So those would be my advice, is to kind of seek out those companies that are already doing things that you like to do and try to work with them. Everybody's, especially the small businesses, are looking for help and great people. And yeah, I just think it's a fantastic industry to be in, even though there are a lot of bumps and challenges.
We have a few questions coming in from our viewers. I'm going to ask you guys. Somebody asked, do you see edibles trending more towards pantry staples or staying in the candy realm?
Pantry staples.
It's definitely evolving. Yeah, I'm having conversations now where it's definitely evolving, and you have patients and consumers that are coming on board that are not greatly interested in consuming sweets. And so we have to evolve and change the game, and it's happening for sure.
And then I have another question. Someone's asking, dispensaries or local dealer?
Like Andrea said, you have to know your source.
No comment. Well, I would love to wrap by asking you guys to tell everyone if you're working on anything that we don't know about, if anything's new coming, like what do you want to let people know, like where to find you, where to see you, where to watch for you, anything?
Well, I have a few things coming up. So I can't really, divulge.
Yeah, if you're able, yeah.
But if I have some amazing things that are coming up that I'm working on. But just follow me on my IG, Canna_Queen71.
Great. Well, let us know too. We would love to talk about it in the magazine.
Oh, for sure. You should have all of us on the cover of your magazine.
Sure, we could do that too. It'll be illustrated somehow, but we could do that for sure.
Love you, Andrea.
How about
on my
you,
end,
Miguel?
99th Floor is working. We're diligently working on our product line, and hopefully within the next year, post-COVID, we should be able to release in legal states.
Awesome.
And it's not going to be sweets.
Not sweets. All right.
Not sweets.
Well, I think when I had you in the magazine in 2017, you said to me once that you wanted to be like the Swanson of food, but cannabis health food. So
yes, a lot of the clients that I cook for, some have health issues, some have a lot of restrictions. So it's a catered dietary meals for these people, and something that we want to be the stofers of cannabis and provide food for everybody at an affordable price.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
awesome. How about you guys, Mennley? Can you talk about anything you might be working on or coming up?
Oh, she got muted. The same thing happened to me. I tried to mute myself because it was loud, and then I couldn't unmute myself. There.
I'm back. There are, I think, like a lot of us, there's so many things cooking in the kitchen, no pun intended. But I'm really excited to take Cinas y Fronteras, the charity pop-up, sort of to the next level in terms of being able to provide free meals and free plates for people. It's difficult because there isn't that much of an infrastructure to really do the deliveries and whatnot. But that is something that I'm striving to figure out, because it seems like a very important thing to do right now.
Very cool. And Shanel?
So you guys can find me over at Ardent. I think we're Ardent LLC on Instagram and Facebook, and we're focusing on the continued launch of our device, and we're excited to get back up and get our kits up and running. So we have our infusion kits and our little baking kits, so you can make little snacks and things right in the device. And so we're excited to get that going. And then kind of on the advocacy side, we have a lot brewing here in Massachusetts with the equity piece. We got really made a lot of progress getting cities and towns to give like exclusivity periods to economic empowerment applicants, and but obviously not everybody's happy about that, and we got slapped with some lawsuits from some multi-state dispensaries that don't care about equity, right? And again, instead of putting up solidarity messages, really what they need to do is take action and not fight against equity. So we just actually got the good news today that our nonprofit Equitable Opportunities Now was accepted again to Northeastern Law School's program, where they provide a year's worth of legal analysis into whatever issue we're having at the time. And so they're going to be able to tackle some of these arguments that were made by the dispensary against our equity programs, and then hopefully be able to take that research and push forward to other cities and towns and show them that they don't have to be afraid, that they can put equity programs in place. So really excited, and that news we just got earlier today. So definitely.
Can you tell everyone who's listening where to follow your Equitable Opportunities Now program? I think it's on Facebook, but I'm not
Yeah, so Eon is on Facebook. I believe we have a page and a group, but that's also one of the things we're doing is beefing that up. A lot of what we do at Eon is kind of like, legal work behind the scenes, and we're definitely going to be, letting people know much more about that. We've had 2 different reports that have come out so far about equity and supporting that, like on a constitutional level, and so we shared that with like Minority Cannabis Business Association and other groups, but definitely excited to make that available to people and just people who are active, who are pushing forward and taking this on in their own city and town, because obviously these are issues that anybody who's trying to push for equity is going to encounter along the way, all the naysayers, and often that's all it takes, right, is somebody saying, oh, that's illegal and you can't do it, and it's like, well, no, you have to be able to have the support to push back on that. So yeah, definitely we'll share some more, and hopefully when we get that up, we can share that with you guys and help spread the word.
Awesome. Somebody wanted me to wish you happy 5th birthday to Ardent.
Oh, yay. Thank you. We just turned 5 officially. I mean, we've been working on the technology before that, but we officially incorporated 5 years ago on June 15th. So
that's awesome.
And I'll plug it. We have a little anniversary sale that's going on right now that with the code 5-year, and it is with 10% of all proceeds going to a mix of Black Lives Matter and LGBTQ orgs there. So if anybody's interested in that, it's a good time to grab one.
Perfect. Everybody, anyone else? I think we wrap this up. Thank you so much for you guys being here and your time today. It was so good to see all of you. I was so excited. I think I mentioned, I don't know if you guys heard me, but I had at least 70 some messages on DM to me on Instagram saying that they were so excited to hear what you guys had to say. So I'm really happy that we could do this today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is great.
Thank you guys. So good to see you guys.
I know.
Pleasure to see all of you. I know.
I just want to talk about, food and stuff.
I know.
Have a little smoke session. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Zooms make me want to risk it all. Be like, yo, let's meet up for drinks.
That was awesome.
We'll definitely have to do that.
I think I'm the only one cheersing over here.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I've been a square with water. I need to. It's Friday. It's Juneteenth.
Yeah, it's Friday. It's Juneteenth. It's a celebratory day, and
Oh, happy holiday.
seriously.
Has anyone celebrated Juneteenth like prior to like this right now?
Can't say I have.
I have, but not necessarily in Oakland, in the Bay Area, they have a lot of Juneteenth like festivals and fairs and little markets. And that's usually the way I had done it in the past, but never in quarantine, that's for damn sure. It's gonna be just a spread of food for like just myself. But
Man, I think since 2016, I've been saying like, I just want to be at home. And now I'm like, now I can't wait to get out of here. Part of me just wants to go back to work. And the other part of me is like, I don't know, this is kind of nice. Maybe work just looks a little bit different, here on out.
Yeah, the aftermath is going to be quite interesting. I know a lot of personal people or companies that I know are closing their offices because it makes sense and it saves a lot of money.
Well, I was reading an article the other day and they said, if most companies are saying now you don't have to be at the company. So if you think about, if I move to New York because I want to work on Wall Street and now I don't have to do that, you can live anywhere in the country, or anywhere you want to be. I wonder, where will people go exactly?
Anywhere. I have a friend that just moved to Jamaica. She'll be there for like 6 months and working remotely. And interestingly enough, I knew that this was feasible, one, for working in the industry, because, if you go into the kitchens of like Thomas Keller, he has restaurants all over the place. And so he's doing his lineup remotely, for all of the kitchens all over. But also I worked with a company in New York, and we would travel the country and we would work remotely. So I've always known that it's feasible, but it's a new concept for a lot of people because we're used to this antiquated idea that you have to do the 9 to 5 thing.
Right. It's sort of shattering the fact that most things could have been an email, in fact. Every meeting could have been an email.
Sit around the table. You don't need to bring a pad and pencil pretending that we're interested in.
I just want to say, I want to give a shout out to, I think it's Marcella cooking something. And
oh my God, I've been looking at that.
What are you making? I would love to know because it looks good. You're just intentional, like.
Her mic is muted, so you have to type in for us. You have to type Marcella.
Marcella. Okay, here we are. Look. Hi, nice to meet you guys. I'm Marcella. I'm from Uruguay here, and I'm making some sweet chili to sell in organic markets here in the country. And for the past 5 years, I've been cooking with cannabis here. I am the first woman in South America, actually. And I'm very happy to see all of you. Oh my God. I'm very excited. I love it too. Thanks so much for the opportunity. We don't really have a lot of information source around here. So everything we have, it's through all of you guys. Andrea, I'm a very big fan of yours. Shanel, I tried to buy Ardent so many times when I was overseas because here we don't really get it. So in the future, maybe I will get to US and I'll get it.
Oh, I love that. I love Uruguay.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much, Marcella.
Whenever you guys come, please let me know. Cheers.
That's awesome. She's making a chili sauce.
Cool. Nice. You hear me?
I think that's it. Is that a wrap?
So
yeah. If there's no further questions, on behalf of Crop to Kitchen and Trace Trust, we're so glad that you guys could spend your afternoon with us. Thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you to Joline for moderating, Andrea, Miguel, Shanel, Mennley. Thank you so much for giving your time to us today. This was recorded and it will be available shortly. We will be letting people know how to get that, but thank you everyone so much for participating.
Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you for having us.
It was so good to see you. Let's talk about that next cover.
Yes.
Yes.
Have a good night.
All right, you too.